ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Unit 6. Today we're going to do our note 1. We're going to introduce exponential functions, and then you probably have an activity to do with this. So make sure that you pause along the way if there is anything where you need to be writing, and I'm moving on. Don't forget, you can rewind too. So exponential functions are in the form y equals a to the x, where a is greater than 0. So it means it's not a negative number or it's not 0. And a is also not 1. Okay? So really we can say, well, here's the thing. You don't want to say a is greater than 1 because a could be a decimal like 0.5, 0.6 repeating, etc. Or it could be a fraction like 2/5. So a could be something between 0 and 1, but it doesn't include 0 or 1. All right. So we are going to, just like we did in our quadratics, is we're going to do a table to help us graph. Now exponentials, if you look through your notes, you'll see that a lot of our a lot of our graphs look like this. We want to know what's happening when it's -1, what's happening when it's 0, 1, 2, and 3. So we're going to go ahead and type those numbers in. So we're going to do 4 to the -1 power. And we get 0.25. 4 to the 0, anything to the 0, guys, is 1. 4 to the first is 1. 4 squared gives us 16. And then 4 to the third is going to give us 64. Now, obviously, we're not going to be able to graph all of these, but we're going to do our best. So at -1, we're at 0.25. So just give a decimal in there. At 0, we're up at 1. 1, we're going to be up at 4, and then we know 2, we're up at 16, so our graph is, let's see here, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, so we're at 216, and then we aren't going to be able to graph the 64, but that's okay. So we're going to go up like that. Exponentials all have this kind of shape that goes up like that, or it's weird, and it's going to go down. Our y-intercept here is at 1. All right, so let's go ahead and move to our next one. Same idea here. We are going to do our table from -1, 0, 1, 2, and 3. Generally, that's the table that we are going to use when we do our exponential problems most of the time. So I want you to pause here, and I want you to see if you can finish filling in the table, and then give it a shot at graphing it. All right, hopefully you had paused it there and got this table filled in and gave it a shot at graphing it. So very similar to our last graph. And then we also see here that our y-intercept is also 1. Now keep that in mind because we're going to look at y-intercepts of a couple other problems in a little while. All right, so our next problem here, this problem is a little bit different than our 2 previous problems. It says 4 times 2 to the x. Now, we are not going to multiply the 4 and the 2 to give us 8 because the 2 has the exponent, the 4 does not have the exponent. Okay? So, when you look at this, and you can do -1, 0, 1, 2, 3, I'm just going to pick 2. So we have 4 times 2 squared. That turns into 4 times 4. Just the 2 portion is squared. Okay? So if we erase that, we plug 1 in. We're going to take 4 times 1 squared. 1 squared is 1, so we get 4 times 1, so 4. Okay, so go ahead and use your calculator. You can just type these right into your calculator and see what you can get with that. Okay, so for -1, we should have got 2. Oh, goodness. I did something wrong. Let's see here. We should have 2. We should have 4 here. I know. Here's where I did something wrong, you guys. I am so sorry. It's 4 times 2 to the first power. So we have 4 times 2. So that's 8 here. My powers, that's changing, Mrs. Madison. Now what's in my parentheses? So here we have 4 times 2 to the third power. I'll give you a moment just in case you didn't get that before. So we should end up with 32. All right, so if we graph this, notice this time at -1, we're up at 2. 0, we're up at 4. 1, we're at 8. 2, we're up at 16. And then 3, we're off the graph. Sometimes we can graph what's at 3 and sometimes we can't. So if we look at this one, now our y-intercept occurs at 4. Okay, so keep that in mind. We're going to come back to look at those in a little bit. All right, so let's go ahead and look at this one. It's 6 times 1/3 to the x. So our same values for x, but this time it's going to be 6 times 1/3 to the -1. 6 times 1/3 to the 0. Go ahead, I want you to fill the table in, so you're going to pause the video here so you can fill the table in on these problems. Okay, so taking a look here, -118, that's just a touch off our graph, so we can graph that. This graph is going down and to the right. And then we have to notice that our y-intercept is at 6 this time. All right. So, again, we're going to come back to that y-intercept conversation here in a moment. Let's go ahead and look at problem 5. Here, we are adding something after we do the exponent. So we still have our -1, 0, 1, 2, and 3. So we're going to take 2 to the -1 and then add 3 to it. 2 to the 0 and then add 3. Adding 3 is our last step here. Okay, go ahead. You guys should be pretty good at pros. This is our 5th problem. You guys should fix this table up. So go ahead and I want you to pause it and finish filling in the table and graph this. Okay, so looking at this one, we actually can graph all of our points. So we end up with a more compacted, but it's still increasing and to the right. And here our y-intercept this time is going to be at 4. Okay, our y-intercept is going to be at 4. All right, we have one more like this, then we'll have our conversation about the y-intercepts. Okay, so here this one kind of combines both of what we have looked at. We are multiplying something, there's the exponent, and then we're going to subtract something. So we have our -1, 0, 1, 2, and 3. So we have 2 times 0.5 to the x. Oops, now instead of x, we have the -1 minus 1. 2 times 0.5 to the 0, and then -1, and so on. And I'm going to tell you a little shortcut right now, so hopefully you guys are listening. If you take your graphing calculator and go to your y equals, okay? I'm going to pause here and bring up my graphing calculator. Okay, so here we are. If you go to your y equals, you'll want to clear anything out in there, and we can actually type this in. So 2 parentheses 0.5 parentheses, make sure you do your exponent with x. Don't forget you got your little variable button there, and then you want to make sure you come out of the exponent, and then we have our -1. So if you put that into your y equals, we can actually have the graph calculator do the table for us. So first we want to go and do second window, and that brings us to table set. I want my tables to start at -1. And then that way I don't have to scroll up and down. It just gets it for me there. Okay, so that was second window, and that brought me to table setup. And I can start at -1. So then second graph, and now that brings me here to my table so I can fill in my table from that. Now when I'm done with the cardboard, it's going to disappear. So like I said, it disappeared, but we have 3, 1, 0, -0.5, and -0.9. I just rounded that one. Oops, sorry, -0.8. It's 0.75, so we're going to run that 0.8. Okay, so -1, we're up at 3. 0, we're at 1. 1, we're at 0. 2, we're at -0.5, and then -0.8. Okay, so our graph is kind of starting to go below our x-axis, and our y-intercept here was at 1. All right, so the y-intercept has to deal with what is being multiplied and added for. So if we go back, we look at ones that were just a to the x, our y-intercept is 1 for both of those. But when we start to multiply something, that is moving that y-intercept up. So like we multiplied by 4, so my y-intercept was up at 4. Here, my y-intercept was up at 6. But notice, once I start to add or subtract something, then that's going to affect the y-intercept a little bit differently. Because 2 to the 0 power is 1, and then we add 3. So adding something changes that differently. Here, I multiplied and I subtracted, so then that changed it differently. I'm going to jump a couple of slides. Oh, where did it go? Oh, gosh darn. Let me go to my computer so we can make that work for us. I'm going to jump a couple slides, and we'll just talk quick. So when you add or subtract, that is making a vertical shift. So that is going to be moving our function up and down. When we multiply by something, that moves our, it gives a horizontal shift when we multiply. Oh, add and subtract and add and subtract. Vertical is add and subtract. Horizontal, we see in the exponent when we add or subtract. And then stretching, that's when we multiply our function. So it becomes taller or it becomes squatter when we multiply it. And that's all going to affect our y-intercept. Just a little side note. All right, let's go ahead and do some word problems because we love word problems. Now, when we do word problems, we're in a real world situation. So in our XY table, it does not make sense to have negative 1. So we're going to start with 0. Again, guys, it's exactly like what we were just doing. Okay, so we are given our function here. Instead of to the x power, it's to the w. W is representing our x, which is weeks. And then E is representing our earnings, and that's going to be the same thing as Y. So go ahead, and we're just going to fill that into your Y equals. I can graph it calculator. And then you're going to fill the 2 in, and then we'll graph it. And why don't you do the table, pause it, do the table, and then come back and we'll talk about how we want to graph it. Okay, so hopefully you ended up with the same type of numbers that I did. Now remember, our X is our W for weeks. So our weeks are just going to increase 1 by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We don't even need to go that far. Okay, our earnings, I see that we have our lowest one is 11 and our highest one is 49. Let's just go by 5s and mark every other one. So it's 5, 10, 15, 20. 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, 55, 60, and that's plenty. All right, so when we graph our points, we're at 0 and 49.9, so just below 50. 1, we're at 34.5, so that's 35 there, so we'll go just below 35. 2, we're at 23.9, so we're going to go just about a little more than halfway. And 16.5 at week 3, so just above our 15, and then at 11.4 for week 4. All right, so you'll see that we see this trend of the weekly earnings decreasing. And let's talk about why does that make sense? When does a movie usually make the most money? Typically, remember I'm talking typically, is the opening weekend. People want to see it right away. And then less people go, so they're going to make less money every week when they have a movie. Okay, so then let's answer the question. Estimate how much money the movie made on opening weekend. And it says W equals 0 is opening weekend. So they made approximately $49.9 million. Because earnings is in millions of dollars. All right, let's go ahead and look at this next one. We talk about cars, and generally, when you buy one, they say, decrease the value when you drive off the lot. Okay, so we have 25,000 times 0.82t, and V represents the value of the car, and T is time of year. So T and V. So we're gonna deal with real world stuff. So we're starting at 0, and this is talking about years. And actually, it says graph the function and estimate the car's value after 5 years. Let's just throw another line in. 5. Okay, pause it here, put it in your calculator, make it do the work for you, and get that table filled in. All right, hopefully you took the time to get that into your table. So we see that our cost, our value of the car is decreasing. Time is our X, and that's just in years, it represents years. So we're just going to go 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Sorry, mine was a little sloppy. And then we are going to look, we need to be at least a 25,000, and then our lowest is our 9,000. So how many lines do we have here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. Oh gosh, darn. Okay, let's just go by. Let me see here. So if we go by 1,500, that should give us enough space. So every line is 1,500, and I'm going to mark every other line. So we have 3,000 at the second line, then it's 4,500, then it's 6,000. So every 2 lines is going to be worth $3,000. So if you want to go up like that, every 2 lines is $3,000. We should end up with like 2,700. I think 21, 24, and we will have 27,000. Okay. So if you need more time to finish writing those, pause the video. Let's keep going then. So at 0, we're at 25,000. So we're going to be just shy of 25,500. Okay. Then we're at 20,050 acre 1, so we're below the 21,000. Then 16,000, we're going to be about here. 13,700. So remember that would be, that's 1350, so we're going to be above that line, just slightly. Then we're at 11,300, so we're going to be here. And then we have 9,000. So let's see here. There we go. Oh, one of my points should be a little bit lower. Well, we're going to go with that. So we have a super slight curve to ours, but as it decreases longer, if you were to graph that, we would extend it out, you're going to see it decrease. So the biggest decreases we see is really right away in the first 2 years. We saw those decreases being pretty big. So we estimate in about 5 years, it's going to be worth $9,260.50 approximately. Okay, so we have, does this chart show exponential behavior? So exponential behavior is what we've been looking at, and it has that curved shape to it. And so for this one, we are going to go ahead and we're going to add these points into our list on our graphic calculator. And we're going to see, does it show exponential behavior? So I want to go out of that. And you want to hit Stat, that's by your arrow button. So Stat and Edit. And if you have any data in there, you're going to arrow up and you want to hit the Clear button. Do not hit delete. If you hit delete, your list will go away. We don't want that to happen. So I want you to put your X's, values, each line in the list 1. And then once you have all those in there, then we're going to go to list 2. So just arrow over. We're going to put in our Y values. If you need to pause the video because this is going too fast or rewind it, please make sure that you do that. Okay, and our last one, 156.25. And enter. All right, so you want to make sure that your lists are going to end up together. So now we're going to work on graphing those. So you can't just hit graph. We want to make sure our stat plots are turned in. So hit second, Y equals. And I can see that my list 1 or my plots 1 are turned off. So I'm going to hit enter. And I want to hit enter so that on is highlighted. And then you just always want to double check that X is list 1 and Y is list 2. If by chance it is not, you are going to hit second 1 to make it say list 1 and second 2 to be list 2. Now I got to think about my window, because if I just hit graph,
It's just kind of, oh, I have my y equals still in there. You want to clear that out. All right, graph, look, I don't see much. So my window, I want to change my window. Think about my x values. I'm going from 0 to 30. So I just want to go from like -5 to 35, and let's go by 5s. My y's, I go from 10 to 156.25. So let's go, I'm going to just go -5 again, because that's going to give me a x-axis. And then let's go to 160. And I have it going up by 10s, that's fine. You can go up by 5s, whatever. So hit graph, and now we can see our whole exponential. So does that look, I should say, our whole data. Does that look exponential? I would say yes, that looks exponential because we see that curved shape in it. All right, then go ahead. I want you to pause the video here and try this one in your graphing calculator and determine, do you think it shows exponential behavior? And when you come back, I will have it in mind and we can have that conversation. Okay, I just want to pop on and say, this is what I did for my window. We'll see what it ends up looking like, but you might want to try that for your window. All right, so I'm going to hit graph, and there we have it. I would say this looks like it could be exponential behavior. It's got that curve to it. I'm going to just zoom in just a little bit. So I'm going to go down to maybe -2, and then let's go -2 and 2, and let's just see what it looks like here. Yeah, definitely just a little closer, you can see that it has that curve to it. All right, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. I want you to take a moment to turn your pages, and you see the last man standing activity, and I want you to go ahead and rip that page that has all the little lives on and cut those out, and then you can work through the activity next. And then don't forget, you got 6.1 worksheet for homework.